Welcome to East Coast DNA. I'm your host, Darcy Walsh. And today's guest is, I've been fortunate, there's been a few of these lately, but probably somebody that doesn't need any introduction, especially people that are fans of East Coast music. So today's guest, we have Lennie Gallant. Thank you for joining us, Lennie.
Pleasure to be here, Darcy.
So you're one of those names I'm sure that you're very aware of. You're quite legendary in our parts, despite the fact that you're known outside of our region. Within the East Coast, you're quite a big name out there, but your career actually goes back quite a bit. A lot of people that have been featured on this show, even people that are not considered new or up and coming artists, or people that have probably only been on the scene for 10 years or less. And I think your debut album was in like 88.
88, that's right. I put out my
Yeah,
first album, Breakwater, was in 1988. Yeah,
amazing. So I was fortunate enough to have a few can rock icons. We've recently had on the Grapes of Wrath and Skydiggers,
cool.
but really focusing on some East Coast music is a nice little treat for me too, being that this is primarily an East Coast music podcast. So I was able to draw connections for them, but you yourself, you're from Rustico, is it?
I'm from Rustico, Prince Edward Island originally. It's actually where I'm at right now as I'm speaking to you.
Amazing.
Uh, I lived in Halifax, though, for quite a while, got almost 30 years. But I'm back on Prince Edward Island now, my real home. And yeah, so that's where I'm.
Amazing. Yeah, as a fan out there in the scene, I kind of relate at you as a Nova Scotian artist, which would be the Halifax geography, I suppose. But you're definitely, as I mentioned, known all around the region. So I'm curious, early days in Prince Edward Island. So were you like a musician very long by the time you put out that debut album? Like, is 1988 when you just started doing it professionally, or was there a lot of stuff going on before that album?
I was in a few bands. I really wanted to be in a band when I started out. I didn't think I wanted to be a solo singer-songwriter.
Hmm.
And I was in a number of acts. Probably the more well-known acts at that time were leaning kind of folk rock slash Celtic rock, or Celtic. And I was in one on Prince Edward Island called Speed the Plow, which got a certain amount of recognition. We toured quite a bit. Unfortunately, we never made an album. Well, I wish we had because it was a good band, really good players. And then I was one based out of Halifax, more of a Celtic band, straight ahead Celtic band, something like in the tradition of the Bothy band, in Ireland. That's what we kind of aimed for in our. So and I really liked the Celtic stuff and fooling around in that genre, but writing my own songs was really what I wanted to do, and so and yeah, 1980, I tried putting together bands all the time, but the other people in the band didn't want to commit to it. They just wanted to dally in it, and I wanted to make a full commitment. So I decided, well, I guess I'll just do it on my own. So that's what I started doing. I put out the first album in '88. It got well received, and I suddenly found myself playing festivals across the country and beyond. I took that as a bit of a pat in the back, and I just kept on going.
It is nice to also, for myself, reflect in where I know a little bit. I mean, anybody that gets to know something knows they only know a fraction of it. The more they get to know, the more they know how much they don't. But for East Coast music, I often relate a lot back to if somebody was nominated for like an ECMA or if they won like a Music Nova Scotia award and the kind of recognition around that. But for the younger artists that maybe aren't even not even aware, like before the two, even in the 90s, that wasn't even so much a thing. So definitely in the 80s, we didn't have the same type of industry associations in our region.
Hmm.
I know that before ECMAs, there was was there like a maritime music festival or something like that, that maybe was Halifax based?
I don't even know if there was. I'm not
Yeah.
aware
And
there was.
I think that was very short-lived before it all kind of flipped over. So early days recognition, I'm kind of curious where you've been around this whole time. You would have an interesting perspective. as far as what it was like starting off then as somebody from the East Coast of Canada trying to get your name out there recognized. And you had mentioned that like in early starts with bands touching on the Celtic music. But as far as I know for music history, in the past, like in that era, would primarily be known as Cape Breton fiddlers, despite the fact that there's four provinces here.
Mm.
So, what was it like for you out there trying to say, I'm Lennie Gallant? Are you, I'm Lennie Gallant, a musician, or were you saying, I'm Lennie Gallant from PEI or from Nova Scotia?
Um, well, the good thing about the ECMA's, I think, East Coast Music Association, was that it brought attention to the East Coast. It's quite incredible the number of artists that started out on this part of the world that have traveled the world and gained
Hmm.
international. And yet, the general opinion was, when I started recording, was that if you wanted to make it, you have to go to Toronto, or New York, or Nashville, or some larger center. And I think the whole thrust of the East Coast Music Association was to show the world, like, hey, we are here because we want to live here, not because we don't feel that we can make it elsewhere.
Hmm.
So we are celebrating our own. And if you want to have a great time, a party, and yet discover some amazing music, come and see us because we're tired of going to see you. And that worked out really well. It got me my first record contract with Sony Music, and people came down and they would see what we were doing and get excited about it and sign up various artists because it was like a grand awakening in Canadian music that this is a real hotbed of music down on the East Coast, and it's proven to be so. And I think the in the early days of the East Coast Music Awards, it was a incredibly popular television show as well.
Yeah.
I think it was it rivaled the Junos, I think, in terms of audience, in the early days, and rightly so. And so it was great. It served the purpose. It really made people look beyond the major centers as a place where you could discover great music and not just Celtic music. And I think that's one thing about the East Coast over the number of years that it's been going, the East Coast Music Awards, and that people have come to realize that it's there's great rock bands, blues bands, pop, rap, et cetera, et cetera. It's not just Celtic music, down there.
Absolutely.
And so it's worked really well like that.
Yeah, if anything, in doing these episodes, the hardest thing is both trying to put somebody into a genre and trying to avoid using genres in the conversation.
Yeah.
But that just kind of goes to show that like the East Coast isn't any one thing. We
Hmm.
definitely have a little bit of everything. So one thing that's been common too is when I ask for advice from artists that maybe want to give a little bit of a leg up for some of the up and coming artists, the idea of just going out and doing it and kind of what you did, where, try it. And if the band thing doesn't work, do it under your own name. Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of artists that are kind of learning that on their own too. But another thing that I do get as common feedback from artists is to do it your own way as well and not necessarily feel obligated to do what you're supposed to do.
Hmm.
So I'm curious in the way that you've approached your music. 16 albums, is the new album number 17 or?
I'm terrible with numbers. I think it's number 16, but
Yeah, okay.
I should know.
So
Not sure.
with that
I think,
many albums out there, you definitely have a huge repertoire, but the new album is the first English album that you've had out in a while.
well, yeah, it came out in the press about that, and so it's a little bit confusing. But it's not like I haven't been busy in the last 7 years.
Yeah, yeah.
I haven't put out an English Lennie Gallant album, a straight ahead Lennie Gallant album in 7 years. But in that 7 years, I have released an English Christmas album with all original music about for Christmas, and two francophone albums that I started a duo with my partner Patricia Richard called Siren et Matelot because before that I liked performing in French and I had recorded francophone albums as Lennie Gallant, but it got a little bit confusing. People would come to the show, well, is he going to sing in English or is he going to sing in French? And so I thought, well, you know what, I'm going to separate it somehow. Yet, and we created a band called Siren et Matelot, which means the siren and the sailor, and released two albums under that name, which have done quite well. So there's two albums in French and the Christmas album, and then I was working with Jimmy Buffett and some other projects as well in that 7 year period. And so it's not like I haven't been working, but
Hmm.
when I suddenly realized it was 7 years since I put out a bona fide, straight ahead Lenny album, I was a bit surprised, and so it's overdue.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I was surprised reading that too, because well, I was aware of the Christmas album, but I'm like, I'm sure that he's had something. And like, even if you go, there's content out there. Kind of to your point, you've been busy this whole time.
Yeah,
But the French thing, I find it interesting because a lot of the artists that I've interviewed that are bilingual that initially started off in English are exploring a little bit of French now as well. So they're starting to have some bilingual songs, or they're mixing languages within their albums, or maybe trying to do something smaller scale that's all French. And some of the artists that I've been fortunate enough to meet out of New Brunswick that are primarily French artists are starting to do the opposite as well. They're trying to get the
yeah,
English people out there as well. So I'm starting to see that they're floating around more and more in cities like Halifax, and I'm starting to see them on English stages and starting to incorporate English songs. So as
yeah.
a Canadian identity, it's great to see the French out there. I have admitted it on the show before. I'm a little bit ignorant. I don't know French. I know enough that I could fake a conversation in the street maybe to get directions, but that's about as far as I can go. So
Yeah.
kudos to people that are out there putting the effort out there, because I definitely have a lot of respect for people that have taken the effort in their lifetime to be fluent in more than one language. Now, when you approach songwriting, uh, I'm English, so I hear you speaking English, and I'm not picking up French, but I know that you know French. So when
Didn't
you,
speak French. I didn't speak French, even though I am a Acadian.
okay,
I didn't speak French until I was in my 20s. Uh,
wow,
and so I had to gain the language and learn the language. And so writing in French was a bit of a mountain. And my first French album was under the name Lennie Gallant. And I don't think I've ever worked so hard on an album. And I would get together with all kinds of people who knew the language and the sense of poetry really well and rewrite every song. But it's wonderful working with Patricia because French is her first language. And so
hmm,
I don't have to go off seeking other people out to, how do I say this in a poetic way or in an interesting way? And she's great. So we make a good team when we're writing stuff.
definitely fortunate for you to have that in your back pocket to be able to pull on that as a resource as well. So
Yeah.
when you went into recording the new album, where you knew that you were going to sit down and record an English album, was there a little bit of an adjustment to go back into that thought
N-
process?
Not at all, because English is where I'm mostly comfortable.
Yeah,
I started off as an English songwriter. The French was a bit of a detour for me.
sure.
One that a matter of the heart, really. That I really wanted to do, explore my ancestry, I guess, or Acadian heritage or whatever through music, even though the albums themselves are very contemporary. But writing in English is what I do and what I'm much more comfortable at. So if anything, it's a relief, not an adjustment
Sure.
when I work in English.
And now something that's very common these days, where like the recording has kind of become a different beast, where we have digital streaming and not so much of a reliance on the physical media.
Yeah.
I definitely, when I hear the name Lennie Gallant, instead of thinking of the albums, which you have an extensive collection of, I think of live performances because I see that you're out there hitting the road.
Yeah.
And in the immediate future, we're talking about new material that's coming, but you're doing a spring summer tour to kind of kick off promotions to let people know there's a new album coming out, and you're hitting quite a few dates, not just specifically in my neighborhood, but I'm a Pictou County boy, so I skimmed the line to see if maybe there was a Glasgow or Pictou date. And although I didn't see those, I did see Miragamish.
Yeah.
And I've seen you play Miragamish before, I believe, too. So
Hmm.
do you have a personal connection to Pictou County?
I love Pictou. I played the DeCoste Center many times, and and we were actually thinking about doing the DeCoste this summer as well.
Okay,
Uh, but because I was doing Marigamish, they thought maybe a little too close, and we're going to put it down the road. So hopefully this fall,
sure.
sometime we'll be playing the DeCoste. But I love playing Pictou County. I got a lot of friends there.
Hmm.
I hang out there, and in fact, one of the songs in my latest album was inspired by a Pictou County boy, Dave Gunn, not
Oh,
Dave
yeah.
not Dave Gunning,
Hmm.
Dave, who's also a musician and a friend of a good friend of mine, and probably a friend of Dave Gunning's as well. But he works with heavy horses, out in the woods and Clydesdales and the like. And he's an awesome guy, great carpenter, and we're very good friends. And usually when I'm going to Pictou, I crash at his place with him and his wife, Kathy, and my whole band stays there. Actually, we have a great time together. Anyway, he called me up one time, not that long ago, as I was working on the album, and he told me about having to bury one of his horses because one of his horses had passed, a favorite horse, and him and a friend had to dig the hole and bury it. And and he said, my buddy who I was working with to bury the horse, he said he looked at me and he said, because I guess they had downed the bottle while they were doing it, and he said, Dave, it takes a lot of liquor to bury a horse, and Dave told me that, and I said, Dave, that is a line that is looking for a song, and so I had to write a song around it, and it's on the new album, and it's kind of it's a bittersweet song. It's a song about life, but also about love and about horses and the whole shebang. And I really like the way it turned out. So Pictou County inspired that song.
That's amazing. It feels like I set up a segue, but that was news to me too. So now I'm even more excited to hear it. And hopefully my Pictou County followers out there have made a mental note to go out there and check out the album so they can dig into that too.
I
But
hope
I will put all the dates as well down in the description below because, as I mentioned, you do have quite a few.
we're
It's
we're playing all the way from Vancouver Island this summer to Cape Breton Island, and so yeah.
it's an impressive schedule that you got there, and I do like that. Like we mentioned the DeCoste, and that versus like the Marigamish location are quite different. But even on this tour, you do have a date at the Marigold, which is just up the highway in Truro there. So you have a variety of stages that you're playing, and a variety of community sizes, and covering the entire country. So it's a very impressive tour right out of the gate, and that's even before the album's out.
No,
So
no, not really. The album's coming out
during.
in, on June 6th.
Oh, okay. There we go.
Yeah, and so the album will be out when we're doing those dates. Yeah.
Amazing. So is you mentioned physical media early on there too, and we kind of briefly went past it, but is there a physical media component that you're taking out on the road to sell as well?
Oh, definitely. This is the new album here. I don't know if you can see it without the flash,
Beautiful, yeah.
but a beautiful cover shot by a good friend of mine, Jack Clark, and uh, and designed by Patricia, and we're very very proud of the whole shebang. And
Amazing.
it's on LP as well, of course. LPs are coming out. Are going to be with us probably in a few days,
Oh, that's
and
amazing.
yeah, so we're pretty excited about it. Yeah.
Yeah, the vinyl releases are something that I usually end up asking about, but the answer usually ends up being that 6 months to a year from now we will maybe see them. So it's nice that you're able to front load that and bring them right out on the road with you.
Yeah.
Now, who are you bringing with you on the road? Do you have like a full band, or is this a solo Lenny thing?
No, it's my usually. my regular quartet for the most part. My partner, Patricia Richard, plays various instruments. She plays all kinds of percussive stuff and Baran, cajon, foot stomps. She also plays mandolin. She sings. Keelan Wedge, multi-instrumentalist, mostly violin, but some bass as well. And then Patricia's son, Julian Robichaud, 21-year-old, amazing guy on the piano. He's classically trained and he really rocks that piano. People are amazed at his chops. And it's interesting. He had never sung before. He just started singing when he was playing with us, and we were all blown away by the fact that he's got a beautiful voice. So we've got four great singers. Well, three great singers and me, and, uh, and some pretty dynamic chops on, happening on stage from everybody. So it's a lot of fun, and we literally have a ton of fun on stage. And I think it really translates to the audience. People leave the shows going, "Wow, you guys look like you were really having fun up there," and it's true. It's for real. We are having fun up there.
It's always good to see a band that has that kind of glue that holds them together, where you actually are having fun on stage. And you mentioned, like, as far as traveling together, that you're crashing together. At least at some of the locations, you're staying close knit on the road as well. So that's always something that, from my point of view, we always want to create that illusion that everyone's having a great time. But it's nice to hear that it's a reality as well.
Yeah.
So, is there anyone that is coming out on the road in support of these dates? Like, do you have an opening act on any of these?
No, I don't have an opening act. We usually have a hard time trying to pare it down.
Hmm.
Trying to pare down the songs we really want to do, and we just got used to traveling and doing shows on our own for the most part. So yeah, there's no opening acts here.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Definitely a couple artists out there that I follow. I've noticed that their performances themselves, their individual sets are getting longer and longer. So it starts to get to the point that there's no necessary place for somebody. I mean, it's great to bring friends out on the road if you have the opportunity, but with such an extensive catalog, you have more than enough material to fill the space. That's for sure. It just comes down to if your players can keep up. So, what can people expect from the live performance? Is it like a full-blown set of new material, or do you do like a kind of package of hits as you go along, some deep dives?
I would say probably half the show anyway would be new stuff at
Hmm.
least, and maybe more depending on where we're at. But there's definitely some songs that people would be upset if we didn't play, and so we've got to do a few of the standard hits, or people would probably say, "Wow, you didn't play that song,"
Oh yeah,
and
absolutely.
yeah, so yeah, it's like that. Seems to work out well. Nobody seems shortchanged after the show. Everybody seems quite happy. So I think it's a nice balance.
I think it comes down to musicianship too. No knocking any bands that don't necessarily fall into that category, but when you have players that have been around for a while, then you know going into those rooms, even if you have a set list, you can just look out in the audience and tell what the reaction's going to be like from them. And as you're playing, you can feel their reaction. So you know, like, oh, maybe we need to change this up and pivot and
Yeah,
throw in something to get their attention back in, whether it's one of the new songs or if it's one of the old songs. Either way, you just
yeah.
gotta play to those rooms. So,
Ex-
is there any advice that you would have for, as I mentioned, a lot of the artists that come on the show are up and coming or fairly recent bands. So, is there any advice that you would give to anyone that's kind of starting off?
Wow, everything has changed so much over the last 10, 15 years, and I'm still playing catch up in many ways in terms of a new way of getting your music out there and of getting connected. And so I'm not sure how valuable my advice would be, but you know, it's a little cliche, but and I don't know how worthy it is, but I've always felt that you should play the music you want to play, whatever's in your heart, whatever moves you, and I never tried to chase a trend or anything else, which may have maybe that hurt me career-wise somewhat in my trajectory, but I feel pretty good about it. I don't mind the fact that I'm not number one in some particular category or something like that. I'm happy that people come out to see my shows. I'm comfortable with the music that I play, and it comes from the heart, and makes me happy, makes me satisfied, and I'm very pleased when people come out to see my shows. So I think if you stay true to what you believe in musically, and that eventually it should work out for you.
Right. I think that that's probably the people that have been around longer. That probably is the key to it. That if you follow the trends too much, you'll get that momentary popularity, but it might be the 15 minutes of fame, and then you've kind of ruined your own trajectory, and you're not doing what you want anymore. That doesn't really put you in a great place. So I'm glad that you've had the opportunity and the success over all this time that you're still doing it all these years later. What does the future look like? Do you have plans beyond this tour?
I've got a lot of projects that I want to do and never seem to have the time to get to them. I had a multimedia show there that was only supposed to run one summer, Searching for Abegweit, it was called, and Abegweit being the original Mi'kmaq name for Prince Edward Island. And it was only supposed to run for one summer, but it turned to be so popular, we ran it for 6 summers and done over 200 shows, and we may run it again, possibly next year even. And uh, I've got other projects, other of that nature, and that I really would love to put together if I can find the time to do that. And yeah, and I kind of already have in mind what I want to do for the next album as well. So finding the time is the tricky thing. Is the tricky part these days, and spend some time with my partner Patricia, and also with my daughter Amelie, and so yeah, that's those are my priorities.
It's great to see that you have all of those options to keep moving forward. And it is kind of funny, like this podcast itself kind of came out of the fact that everything was locked down and we were just starting to get back into live music again and people started recording again.
Yeah.
And then we're only a couple years later. Like, I mean, it's longer than I even realized, but it's not that long in the grand scheme of things. And we're right back to that problem of I don't have enough time.
Hmm.
So it's an interesting perspective to see, but I also think that if we're to stop and think about it, the fact that we have that many things that we want to work on is it motivates us to keep going every day. So it's a great thing to even have that as an issue that we don't have enough time. The time
Yeah.
will come eventually. There's a time for everything.
Yeah, I know it's a funny thing, and I talked to a lot of songwriters about that. That when COVID came, the general idea was, okay, now I got the time to do those projects I want to do and write those songs. But it was a weird phenomenon that actually I didn't write that much during COVID.
Hmm.
And I talked to a lot of other songwriters, and they said the same thing. It's a funny thing. You would think you would have written a lot. I did write some, and a couple of songs that I wrote during that period are on the album, and so it did help. One of the songs that I wrote was during COVID, and it was actually just after I was isolated for a couple of weeks, and it was a song I wrote to my partner Patricia after being isolated for a couple of weeks, and she came. It was on a full moon night, and I played her the song I just wrote, which is essentially a proposal song, and it's on the album. I'm ready to dance. She's a great dancer, and so I use that as kind of a motif for popping the question. And so COVID, it allowed some things to squeak through, and I'm glad that was one of them.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we're not going to necessarily remember fondly, but I think we're each going to remember the time in our own unique ways. So it will be interesting to see how we reflect back on that in the years to come. It's ever changing world, as you mentioned, like 10 years ago, the whole music scene was completely different as far as releases and everything. But
Hmm.
these upcoming tour dates, that's something that's never going to end. Everyone's always going to want to see a live performance of new material, that's for sure.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, I'll put the tour dates down below, but for anyone that wants to hear some new Lennie Gallant, is there a song that you'd like to play off with for this episode?
Well, the first single from the album is called "Counting on Angels." So I mean, I guess you could play that one. The album itself is pretty diverse. You know, it's pretty eclectic in terms of the songs that we chose. But I like to think it's an album that kind of reflects the times we're in, and many of the songs on the album kind of speak about dealing with the times we're in from a point of view of being connected, of being connected to each other and the planet itself, and just you know finding that there's the thing that gets us through difficult times. And so there's a number of love songs on there, a number of up tempo songs like "Takes a Lot of Liquor to Bury a Horse," and yet there's some rather introspective songs, and this is "Counting on Angels" is a song that I think it kind of looks a little bit at how disconnected some people are and are looking for answers. The narrator of the song is is traveling to a destination that seems to be chosen by his partner, who is, I think, possibly a little connected to conspiracy theories and the like, and where are they going to end up? It's hard to say.
It sounds like they're very personal stories, but also some universal themes out there. So it's definitely a lot of people are going to be able to identify with it. And it's nice to see something that's a little introspective because, as I mentioned, a few years have gone by since that big break, and maybe some of us have forgotten to kind of sit back and reflect a little. So I do like to see when a songwriter's taken the time to kind of reflect a little bit and put that into the lyrical content. So I recommend that everyone sticks around and listens to Counting on Angels from the upcoming Shelter from the Storm.
Storm.
So
Everybody says that. I didn't realize everybody says "shelter from the storm." It's "shelter from the storms" with
it's
an S on the end.
plural. Yeah, and that's like a metaphor for the
Yeah,
hardships of life and not even necessarily the physical storms that we may see out our window here. So
there you go.
I like the theme. I like the idea of concept albums and everything too. So I think I'm going to probably sit down and go through the lyrics as I'm listening to the album myself.
Cool.
And I recommend anyone, once again, that's interested in seeing you live, go out there and get tickets in advance if at all possible. And I'm going to try to get to one of these shows too, because I suspect that there's a little bit of story behind the songs in between some of those too. So
Yeah,
I love that format.
and if you are able to pick up, I mean, it'll be online too. But if you're able to pick up the album at all, there's little notes about each song
Perfect.
inside the jacket. We've got little paragraphs on each of the
Oh,
songs.
amazing. Yeah, I love it. And I got quite the physical pile of CDs over here now too. So definitely going to have to add that one into the collection. So I'll
Cool.
have to keep an eye on my own traveling calendar here and compare it with your schedule and see which date I'm closest to. And I'll definitely stop by and say hi when maybe take some photos when I get there too. And another thing I've been doing. So see if I can
Awesome.
get a few shots of you while I'm out on the road.
That'd be
Well,
great. Look forward to seeing you.
so thanks for your time, Lenny. I think maybe in the future we might have to do another one of these again because it seems like we could probably talk for hours if we wanted to dig into your career. And you're already starting to look at a new album with this one not even quite out the door yet. So I'm sure you'll have lots of new content coming our way in the future too.
I think so.
No time to slow down. We need to get all those projects done. So I'm looking forward to hearing a lot more from you. And hopefully some new fans have joined you here too.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me here.
Thank you, and I'll see everyone soon.
Bye. There's a crack in the windshield
windshield running from the driver's side all the way to where she stares. I'm listening to Patty singing Refugee on the radio that's in need of repair. She says the world is all broken, nobody gonna fix it now. Why bother with another band-aid? It's too late now. I'm addicted to the online news feed. She's astrology-led all day. We lie in the bed at midnight, half a planet and a moon sign away. She says the world is all broken, there's too many pieces gone. She's listening to a podcast preacher singing his song. We're counting on angels coming to guide us, coming to answer dreams and our long distance calls. We're throwing our hands up, we gotta surrender. She says that's the only way to mend it all. Another billionaire building a bunker, watching AI win that war. Everybody's on a med of some kind, don't even know what mine's for. She told me to run every red light, or we'd be too late to see what's happening on that mountain of mystery. We're counting on angels coming to guide us, coming to answer dreams and our long distance calls. We're throwing our hands up, we gotta surrender. She says that's the only way to mend it all. Coming to guide us, coming to answer dreams and our long distance calls. We're throwing our hands up, we gotta surrender. She says that's the only way to mend it all. There's a shooter in a high school somewhere, another hurricane on the coast. Her horoscope read this morning, be careful in what you post.